All right. So it's been interesting. I've been trying to, I spend a lot of time waiting in my kids' room for them to fall asleep. So it's kind of nice. I can try to learn coding tasks with ChatGPT in bed while I'm laying there waiting for them to fall asleep. So I've been trying to learn. I think I'm going to be using Redis rather than Celery, although maybe that's not a good choice. Just seems to be a bit smaller. Do background tasks with our Rate My PDF website.
Redis will let you run Python stuff. I thought the whole point of Celery was that you just run Python stuff.
Can you use Celery without Redis? Is that what you're saying?
Can you use? No, can you use Redis? I don't know what Redis Q is. I guess is that a different thing?
It's an alternative to Celery that's a bit smaller and has a simpler API. Essentially, it's enough to handle what we need to do, but it's less to learn. So it's different than Celery, which I obviously like. We've all run into Celery with DocAssemble, but it's really small. I just got something working during our meeting today, just a little simple test. So that's like just 3 or 4 lines to get it to run. So let's see. All right, so we're at last week was a holiday, right? That's why I didn't have one.
I'd be interested in knowing how you've been playing with ChatGPT, like what interface or whatever you've been using just at some point.
Yeah, maybe we can go through it. So I'm just, yeah, that's the one. Bryce, yeah, Python RQ. Let's see. Let me just put a couple things on the agenda. So one is reminder system.
This is the one that has like given you code hints and stuff like that? Or is this a different thing?
Well, let me just write down the stuff.
Okay.
These are things I would like to talk about anyway. And another one is, maybe we can look together at the what information is captured used by interview stats. And why. Maybe it'll be faster to do it together. Maybe it's better to do offline. Just have to look at into that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are it for me, pretty much. Anyone want to? I'll share my screen so everyone can see this, and I can show you the way I've been using ChatGPT.
Awesome.
As part of the discussion of Rate My PDF. Any other things people wanted to talk about today?
I mean, I don't know if other people would be interested, but I'm looking at converting to Playwright or Cypress for ALKiln because it could be really, it could give like a lot of really useful output.
This is alternative to Cucumber?
From Puppeteer, from just raw Puppeteer. Playwright uses Puppeteer, but because just the kind of output it can give is just fantastic, and it's nothing we can construct ourselves. Like, I mean, years of development with a much bigger team type of thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I feel like it's a fair thing to talk about today.
Okay.
So. See. This might be like a real deep dive. We'll see how much time we have to cover all the things that are possible things to talk about. Yeah. But one is it looks like, Michelle, I couldn't tell whether your test succeeded or failed. And yes. Which ones were which were things you wanted to test.
So most succeeded, one failed, I think. If my understanding of behavior is correct. And I will
let's pull that up.
Bring that one up. Yes.
So this is the one that looks like it didn't work.
The one that has a missing check mark, right?
TAUQ. Why is that 612 off the edge?
I believe that was your session. Those are your session IDs.
Oh,
right?
It's a session ID.
Oh, there's two of them that they're those two are missing. One of them by phone. And why is the phone one not there? Let me just check.
These ones with no check marks. Oh, it does say ideas for more tests. I just scrolled through too quickly.
Yeah, that's okay. So
So it is interesting. Yeah. So what I'd want to do is let's see if we can figure out
So
what I'm guessing these are not logic bugs, like they're external to the system issues with delivery.
okay, maybe.
But we should see if we can track that down.
One of my confirmations by phone did not come through. I don't know if I just did not write that down correctly. Let me just check. On my text messages, which is way down here. Like JY came through, but XL did not come through, but XL isn't on here. Where did I write down XL? I didn't write down XL.
This was on the dev server, right? That's I guess where I had
This
the
is on
code.
the
So
dev
someone
server.
could have,
Yeah.
let's see.
So
We're live before that.
down, huh?
Just noting that we're live in case Quentin, you're about to go through a whole bunch of users and sessions and stuff.
I was thinking of that, but let's see. I think we're good. I'm not going to go through a bunch of sessions. I'll just be looking at that one playground session.
It was another one that started with XL that I apparently did not notate down.
Oh, this isn't letting me.
So it didn't get, it got the first confirmation, but it did not get any notices.
What's your email for dev server? Were you logged in for the test? No, you can't have been.
It's the one I messaged to you, I believe. Wait, you know what? Let me check.
Maybe
Maybe
we
it
don't.
was a different one.
No, it doesn't matter, actually. I'm trying to see. This is only showing me installed.
Oh, it's a different one. I will send it to you.
So that may not be the best way to do it anyway.
Okay.
Well,
let me
don't
know.
want to go through all the logs, I guess. That might be the information. You want to just describe what happened? So
I have to recheck the email ones because I thought the phone one I know for sure. So I did one where I just asked to yeah, I don't have my just phone one on here. So I did one where I just signed up by phone and I did not get, I got the confirmation, but I did not get any further notices.
okay, well, that's definitely, let's take a look. Because that does sound like it could be a logic issue. Maybe it only works if you subscribe for email and phone. Let's take a peek here.
Let me just double check my emails.
These definitely seem to be independent.
Double check the-
There are definitely like a lot of things that could be a confounding test if you have more than one running at a time from a playground. But
I think that is worth checking though, because the Like
Yeah.
people could be doing multiple interviews, right? With reminders or multiples of the same interview if they're not. If they're accountants or
Specifically running from the
something.
playground is the thing that makes it a little bit different because it was versed. I was still making edits. Maybe I should have installed it to test it somewhere.
Oh, I see. Well, let me check on those two. Maybe I didn't check for an update. But I mean, if it's not useful, then I won't.
So it'll mark the task as being performed
So UQ,
if the reminder's
Ending in
been run,
UQ.
even if you, like if you changed your mind to then add phone or email, that wouldn't update this. I can see that. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying that I can't find. I can't find this. Nope, I'm gonna have to look a little harder. That's all.
You gave me a phone number to look up and it obfuscates it, but in the Twilio logs, I looked at the Twilio logs and I saw one, not two messages going to that phone number. So that means it wasn't happening at like a spam blocking level by your phone provider, as far as I know, because you would have been two around the same time, right? That you should have received. Does that sound right, Michelle? You should have received two
Am I
phone messages
muted?
around the same time.
Yes, I mean, I didn't, right? I only received one.
So I looked and I saw one entry in the Twilio logs. Twilio is what we use for sending SMSs, not two, with the phone number, which matched the number you sent me. That tells me,
Well, there's one that I went to the interview on my phone. No, I went to the interview on my computer both times and I signed up with my phone, once with email and phone and once with just phone. And I got the confirmation for that one. So I don't know why it wouldn't be on there.
do you want to,
No.
maybe we should try that test again and see if other people have the same experience. I'm just looking through the logic to see if there's a logic issue here, which would stop the SMS message for going out if you only signed up with SMS.
What do you want me to check?
I'm looking right now at the code
Okay.
and just trying to read it and run it in my head to see if there's an error there that would make different behavior happen for a phone versus email and phone.
Okay.
And that's what I'm seeing. It doesn't look it looks independent to me. There's a log, but it will keep running the rest of the block.
If you want, I can do it again and videotape it, but I have the receipt, right? Like the confirmation on my phone for all 3 of the times that I used the phone number.
So
I did it 3 times, but I unsubscribed once. So I should only have gotten a first and second notice for the other 2.
don't think a video would help.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if we should rerun the test, maybe just with one.
I'm wondering
To
if the
avoid-
fact that I had 2 things, 2 phone things out there confounded it. So we can try just phone by itself once. If you want, I can try to recreate exactly what I did, or I can do a different test where it's just the phone.
What was the exact thing you did?
Signed up with phone and email, then signed up with phone and email and unsubscribed via the link.
To what?
Then,
To the one that was the phone and email?
yes. the
Okay.
second one, to the second one. So 1, sign up with phone and email. Test 2, sign up with phone and email and unsubscribe.
Was this in a new browser?
Yes,
time?
incognito browser each time.
Well, was it the same incognito browser, or did you close all of the open windows?
Oh, interesting. I think when I clicked the link to unsubscribe, it might have gone into that. Might be the problem, but that is still a problem.
Oh, not really.
Well, if a person fills out multiple forms and then of the same kind and then uses, but I used the unsubscribe link, so that shouldn't have been a problem. So that should have been a unique session ID.
Yeah, you can only have one session at a time. So
yeah,
if you
so every time I started a session, I started it in a new single incognito browser. I closed the incognito and reopened it.
It sounds to me like something just happened with the session. Let's see. We could try looking at the sessions and see if
Okay.
the session still
Yeah, maybe
exists
I
on the
messed up.
server. That might tell us.
Maybe I messed up. Totally plausible. But I'll put down the phone thing as well.
User directory. Okay. So what was get the sessions deleted? No, it still could still be there. We got a different session ID each time.
Yeah. They're updated with the phone. The other email ones worked. I just hadn't double checked the second notice yet. I hadn't gotten to the second notice. But they worked.
Yeah.
Or second notice.
Let's just try it again without trying a bunch of tests at once. Just do it once and see if
Just
the
do a
specific one
phone.
that failed fails
Okay.
again. That sounds like the right thing to do now. I mean, so the scope of this is good to know about issues, but I think probably only things that we can reason are possible given the scope of the code. Makes sense to me.
Well, I mean, I could recreate what I did, but I can just test it with one phone.
But what you did might have inadvertently been canceling it from the session you didn't expect it to be canceled from.
Right. So I can recreate it and be extra careful that I don't do that. Right.
I'm not sure if I'd rather know if independent of that, if it works. And then as far as possible scenarios where people would be running multiple interviews and having to make sure they don't change their mind about a different one than they expected to.
So I can run the phone one by itself first, and then I can run the one that recreates it all.
I would say just run one more, rather than trying to do two that do different things.
Well, I won't run the next thing I won't run the recreation until the phone one works, right?
I'm just trying to think through, like, I don't know what the recreation would tell us other than there was an inadvertent wrong session being interacted with. Unless there was a bug deeper in DocAssemble.
It would tell us there was a bug deeper in DocAssemble. Like it would tell us that series of actions does not work, right? Whether it's from this code or whether it's from DocAssemble, it would tell us that there is a bug that we should be aware of.
Or it could just mean we have to make sure that the link has like the new session equals 1 embedded in it, right? Like, so if it's just a matter of you
I
opening it
did
up.
new session Right. That's why I'm saying I would recreate it very carefully, because then we would know if it was my mistake or we would know if it was a bug. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'd like to see if just getting reminders by phone works.
Yes, like
Which
I
it
said,
should.
first I
And
will test just
probably don't think
reminders
the other
by
tests would be that
phone.
helpful, but if you want to, it's fine as long as we
Okay.
first tested the first thing.
Yep.
Bryce, were you also able to test it? I don't know if you had any thoughts.
My tests were fine, but I, as per usual, test to like a fifth of the proficiency as Michelle's do. So I would rather lean on hers and try it again. But I didn't run into any weirdness, I think. Got 2 notifications by email and phone both, and then unsubbed, and then didn't get any more.
All right. Okay. I mean, the key here is like you're opening it in different. I just want to make sure I understand, right? Like what we're testing when we do this. Is it like 2 different people happening to run one? I don't know. Anyway, worth writing down exactly what you're going to do here, Michelle, but we don't have to do it live. Let's see.
Okay. I mean, I'm just gonna, I will write it down as I do it.
Let's see. So let me create my PDF. I'll just show you what I've been thinking through. So been kind of working in parallel, doing like some small cleanups to the current site, which is built around Flask, and thinking about whether it's worth moving over to Fast API. First, we thought that'll let us have many fewer dependencies because it has a built-in concept of async behavior. Turned out not to be the case.
It
we
does.
Still need something that's more.
It does. The async behavior is not the same async behavior that we want.
Right. Async does not mean let something run for 3 or 4 minutes and then update the process. It just means you can keep doing other stuff, but you still need a better way to handle things that take that much time to run. So I actually could just, like, there are some things that are kind of nice that I already do have in the Fast API version that were pretty easy to do that I could copy over to the Flask version, or we could just copy over the things that are from Flask into the Fast API version. There's more to copy that direction, but maybe potentially it could be a more solid base to work from. Not sure yet. The other thing that I was experimenting with is like, so we had some other issues with the Flask version. Deployment wise, like the certbot wasn't working the way we wanted it to. It's a pretty minor thing, but something that we're encountering. So I've just been playing around with a different way of deploying the Docker Compose. So I'm thinking that maybe we have four images. The actual app, one for Redis, Nginx acting as a reverse proxy, and then certbot. That seems to be like more like how people recommend deploying services with Docker, one service per container. And these are both really well established, and these three things are like updated and well documented and have a simple modular kind of interface to work with within Docker. So they're not huge extra complications. And then we would, run the certificate renewal in that separate process. And the Nginx config would all be outside of the container, so you don't have to exec into the container, specify the name DocOnZip will take a different approach. It has like a complicated startup script that runs and copies things from the environment. But this feels like a more common way to manage that kind of thing, like setting the host name.
That's fine. That was always I had been trying to get the Nginx conf out and in the repo because that's the right place to put it, but I couldn't get Certbot to stop changing it and breaking it every time essentially. So I have a way to do that. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll see if this
Docker,
works.
I'm not sure if
Yeah.
Docker composing 4 images just seems like a lot, but if it runs and it's not too resource intensive, then it's probably fun.
They're all pretty lightweight, but I know they're still overhead. So that's why I thought it's worth just checking and seeing. If it solves the problem, then that's maybe worth it, even if it does have a bit more overhead. But of course, we do have to be mindful of the server resources. We're running on a 2 GB memory server. So
yes. Yeah.
All right. And then this is interesting. This is basically what it is like to work with Redis queue. I don't know if I needed the cores stuff or not. Basically just say connect to Redis, and then you specify that as the connection that you want to use with Redis queue.
These are all endpoints?
These are not all endpoints, no. But these are endpoints
Those
here.
you have direct endpoints to the queue is the thing that I'm not sure I'm understanding that API.
That is what it's doing right now. This is really just my experiment. This isn't necessarily what we're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, that would be probably something that happens inside. But you wouldn't call this in queue task. You would call it something like upload file, right? And then here you would invoke the job queue. You don't have to expose this task here. It's just basically say how many seconds you want it to pretend to work.
Sure. Okay.
And then using a WebSocket to monitor the progress. I'm not sure if we need to do that or if we just want to poll instead of keeping a WebSocket open.
Polling feels probably fine, but
because we can't really
if it's easy to do
meaningfully
WebSockets.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we can tell people the progress meaningfully, other than it's done or not done.
I've heard of WebSockets recommended, but I have not.
This is all we needed
tried
for the
anything
code, so it's
myself.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, my only concern with it would just be the general overhead. So if it's that, and if it's easy on the JavaScript side too, then or the browser side, then that's, if it's easy, then go for it.
This is what it looked like on the JavaScript side here.
Okay, that's not too bad.
I will say, this didn't do a great job of updating any interim steps, so I want to experiment with that a little bit more. Maybe I wasn't watching it long enough to see, but it did get to the end and the success updated. That worked. And almost all of this code was written by ChatGPT, so I'll show you that too. That's what you were asking about, Michelle. So it's worth double checking it works, of course.
It'd be fun.
But I basically just use it to describe general problems and just basically to help me learn the API a bit better. So first I'm like, well, is it really worth switching from class to fast API? That's the question I asked.
I'm still skeptical of this part because this was the thing that we worked through together and we were using ChatGPT and we ended up being yeah, maybe this is probably a good idea. And then the next day I went and read through all the documentation. It's actually fast API, this is not solving our problem. And I don't think ChatGPT can tell us if it's solving our problem well. It's really good at the details and the more specific stuff, but the high level, we wanted something to run for 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I think actually it can. I think it's a matter of asking the right questions. And I don't think I knew the right questions to ask the last time we were doing it, going through it and double checking things and refine the question. So
So
I think I wrote RQ, but it just turned into 2. I was doing it on my phone.
Okay. You just do it straight on OpenAI. Okay.
So yeah, I have a subscription for right now,
Got it.
which I think I might keep. I've been using a lot more recently, so it might be worth keeping for a bit. And this is on GPT-4, which you can get You have to be on a wait list to get it from the API.
I see. That's part of what I was wondering if it was.
If you pay
3
for
or
this, you get GPT-4 right away. You can do this with some of this with Bing Chat, by the way, which is free and doesn't have as much performance and timeout subscription
Is it using
issues.
4?
It uses 4, yeah.
Oh,
Was available before it was integrated with this chat.openai.com. But there's no memory. It has a message limit of 20. You can only interact with it 20 times before it makes you start over. And it's not as optimized towards, I don't find it as good to interrogate with coding questions. All right, so I had to ask, like, what are the key differences? Oh, this was actually not about Flask versus Fast API. I think this was helpful. In either case, it's recommended to offload the processing of uploaded files to background tasks. So it actually got that answer this time. But I interacted with it, that didn't the first time. But I don't think we really understood the difference between the two, at least when we were asking it before.
That's what I'm saying is that you don't
need some-
know the difference until you actually read through and understand it. And reading its responses the first time, I didn't think it was, I thought it was maybe kind of helpful, but then when I went back and started actually reading myself into documentation, I was like, actually, that was not very helpful at all. And we needed to know that. You need to know the right questions to ask, and to do that, it won't, at least I haven't gotten to the point where I can get it to like help me figure out the right questions to ask. It feels too sort of, not really, but kind of like, yes, Manny, like sure, I'll help you with this, and not really, like, it's not super, like, are you doing the right thing?
Yeah, what I've heard so far is that if you know what you're doing, it can be a very useful tool to generate code that you can then make into working code. Like,
you have to have like a
already have
series
to
of
know what
follow-up
you're
questions if it's something new. Yeah, I think that's right. Like, it's not coding for you. Like, you need to describe the problem. It's doing this, handling the syntax for you.
Yeah.
You have to, and what's the way that we turn ideas into action on the computer? We write instructions. It's basically coding at a different, more abstract level. But making a simpler coding language has not meant that people don't have to know how to code. So, but this was helpful, like going through like a personalized kind of explanation of how to do it. It's a little bit easier than reading a tutorial. I asked a question, like this was kind of vague. It showed a parameter here. I was like, wait a second, what does that mean? That's just passing a parameter to our fake function, which pretends to be
long,
waiting for 5 seconds.
Okay.
So it could explain that nuance of what's important and what's not important in the tutorial, which you can't do with tutorials always. And I talked it through, like I asked what the best way to deploy it was, and I don't know that I agreed with its first answer. That's how I asked more questions. Gave me a lot of information about Heroku, which we could do, but Heroku, I think it's like $5 a month. It's actually about the same price. So, but I don't know that it would be simpler to add all of our dependencies that we were trying to think through having. It might be possible, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I gotta go for the day.
Oh, okay. Sorry. We didn't get to your question. I didn't realize that.
That's okay. This was also good. And yeah, we'll deal with that another time. This was also good.
But yeah, anyway, that's the basic approach is just, and you can do things like, well, what are the drawbacks of this? Like, what, you know, so it might help you learn things that its first confident answer elides. So anyway, it lets you write a lot of boilerplate code really quickly, customized to what you want to do. I could have told it like, hey, this is my server name. You put that in everywhere. You know, it could have done some of those things for me to make the boilerplate code customized. And it's basically the same engine that's in GitHub's Copilot. But the difference is you can ask it open-ended questions instead of just letting it predict what comes next.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I'll see you in a few days. Yeah,
Okay,
around.
see you. Let's see. Anything we want to try to discuss for the recording, Bryce, instead of walking across the hall? We could go through the interview stats stuff, maybe.
Where is yeah, sorry, I was trying to get myself to this. Yeah, I was confused about some of those issues you were making.
So, all right, so let's go to interview stats. So I'm actually not sure what maybe we have to look at the query it's running and just try running it manually to see what's happening.
Yeah, which is I think my biggest thing was that you were like, oh, don't show this in the stats. And my thing is like, if you don't want to show it in the stats, it shouldn't be in the stats. Like it's not saving. We aren't being super smart about what we're saving and what we're not. We only save what it's directly passed in.
But we
So
don't save, this is not saved anywhere, it's like explicitly. So it's not like I'm saving it and then I don't want it in there. Like it's
But it
happening
is.
somewhere in
If
the
it's
background.
if it's in there, it's got to be in there somehow, right? Like unless is DocAssemble doing more stuff than like I was reading in the code. Like it's only saving in it should only be saving stuff in the SQL that you pass in. Besides for the like, it needs the session key, and I think it needs maybe one other. It takes some optional tags that you can pass in, but
Well,
it doesn't.
Here's
Like
what's being
that,
saved. So it's
okay.
nothing, nowhere here, and this code is doing it. And then we're just calling store variable snapshot. So question is, does the code that sets the auto title somehow save it? Or are we like maybe getting more than one key? That's kind of what I'm suspecting, that there's more than one metadata key. It's being pulled in. So that's what I was like, we could track this down. In interview stats, or I think maybe it's in here where we're getting all of the metadata, all of the different entries associated with a particular session. And maybe we should exclude the metadata key because it's generally going to have things we don't want. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not like my interview saving it somewhere and I have to edit out of that. That's just like totally wrong as far as what's happening. It needs to change in this package probably.
So it's mod time, but that's the thing. We have query specifically on JSON storage, mod time data tags.
Which
So
is
sometimes
where the metadata is being set to.
We're putting it in JSON storage.
Yes, yeah, it is. So I think we might just need to exclude. We might need to exclude anything that's called metadata. But I have to remember how this is set up.
Yeah, maybe this is just all like the metadata special stuff that I'm not super familiar with and how it's implemented.
I forget where the metadata is actually. What is that, a tag? There's so many different things that are similarly named here.
Yeah, it's not great. He is. I think key is the session ID. Tags is like just whatever you pass in. I think it's called key in the Python interface for some reason. But it's just specifically something you pass in to save snapshot.
Yeah, so I think we want to exclude the metadata key. That might be what we need to do.
Okay.
Because the metadata key is almost always going to be personal information. So I don't think we want to ever, and those are probably duplicating our inflating our statistics too. Because every interview gets an entry in metadata. So it should be empty for most of the cases.
Null is different than empty string.
But those, I think they were null if there's no tag set. So yeah, I think it's happening. I think maybe the change should be to exclude metadata and let people know that that's happening. Because I think what happens is there'll be an entry in the database which just has the metadata and not the other things you wanted to save explicitly from that interview. So it's the right answer JSON, which is the same thing
Yes, yeah, sorry.
as the store variable snapshot. So yeah, I think those are extra rows that maybe we just need to ignore.
Okay.
The challenge is like we're using metadata everywhere. People can use a different key, but I think it's okay to. All right, I mean, that's what I was thinking. And I probably could have tracked down myself and make this still helpful to. So I think it's still worth excluding it because it shouldn't be in there.
No, yeah, I agree. It's I guess it doesn't make a ton of sense
that.
to try and just have it in a different thing. I'm mostly like, I guess is it just because the metadata could be arbitrarily nested that we're doing the save JSON stuff?
What do you mean? The save JSON stuff.
Why does it? I was trying to figure out like why necessarily
Here.
like right we're using right answer JSON in set interview metadata. Like that's that specific solution instead of the, I don't know, tons of other ways we could be doing it.
So, okay, so the point here is if we want to store information in the session, there's two ways to do it. One would be to just let it be a variable in the interview answers.
Yeah.
But then to get that, you need to run this really slow query. You have to do a nested SQL query to get all of the rows in the user dict, I think is the table that it's in.
Yeah.
Then you have to load them into they're pickled data that you then have to decrypt maybe, and then definitely unpickle. And then you have to load them into an interview session and then extract the information. It's super slow. You do that per interview. So we want something that sets alongside. Sorry, what was it?
Sorry, I was gonna say, I remember that. I do remember like why we switched away from not just keeping it in the interview, but I'm just trying to see if there's anything that's like, are the two options really just interview or JSON storage?
The third option would be add a new database table with a hard-coded set of columns. So this is the only flexible way really to store arbitrary metadata about the interview.
Okay.
And it's quite performant. So it's basically, we're just going to use object storage and you can say whatever you want to store and we're going to run over it. And then we're going to assume certain columns are there. But so it's like as flexible as DocAssemble answers, but because they're structured, you can optimize the queries over it.
Yeah.
So this basically DocAssemble slows to a crawl if you use the built-in answer list feature because it's doing those nested queries to get information out of every session.
That's
lets us. We're trying to get the same data without having to do it the way DocAssemble does. And Jonathan wouldn't add these columns anywhere, which I think I can see why, because they're, the way we want to use them leaks information from the user. And if you're encrypting everything else, it doesn't make as much sense to decrypt that. But yeah. I mean, well, I don't know if there are other ways we should think of, but
mostly I'm trying. So sorry. The thing I'm now trying to just work out is whether it's worth it. We could
Well, what are the other
features.
ways?
Mostly just like if it makes sense, because mostly I feel like we had been, but I hadn't realized. Maybe I had known at some point. I'd forgotten that we were using right answer JSON for this. And I feel like before this, it had been pretty clear of like, these are everything that's going to go in the JSON storage is like data. It's data about the interview that you'd want to run the statistics on, and sort of that's what goes there. And so I'm wondering if it makes sense to do essentially the same thing, but just in a different database table. Still saving JSON. We can still be flexible about it. It's just not where we also put all of our like anonymized data about the interview. I don't know if it makes it doesn't, I don't know. It's one of those things of like, all of this is so blurred and you don't really get like safety or anonymity in any way. Like when you're working at this level, because that's just not how it was designed. And so I don't really know if it makes sense to do it, but that's just the sort of like, would be the right thing. It has a stronger separation of we're putting this data here, we're putting this data here, and not like everything goes in the same table and we just filter by key. You know, and so I think you're probably right. And I'm landing on just like doing exactly what you saying we're doing and filtering by metadata key. I'm just trying to think if that's like, if there's anything I'm not thinking about that would be weird about that, or still potentially just make it just as easy to leak stuff. And I guess the only thing is that you're right, that the key name is anyone can set it to anything, and our stuff will break if they set it to anything. Not break, but it will still be just leaking just as much data if we set it to anything else. And so that's the only thing I can think of, though. And I don't think it's I'm not persuading myself into doing that. So I'm just trying to make sure I consider that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like in terms of what the JSON storage table is for, you can use it for anything. It's not unique to our interview process. So people might have other things there that they don't consider to be statistics about the interview that they're storing. So there are other things maybe we have to think about in terms of filtering it. And you can create multiple rows to store different points in time in the interview, I think, too. So like, I don't know if we should filter those. So like there's uniqueness by session, or we coalesce it maybe.
That's not a bad idea, but I guess like why we have the session.
Yeah, the session is one of the things there. So it feels like I'm used to like having always normalized tables for everything before I started working in DocAssemble, but it actually is really fast. So there's this is basically the NoSQL approach people take, but with the benefit of it being in Postgres.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty performant. I mean, there's a risk of like, you have to know that the data, it can vary from row to row.
That's more what I'm concerned about, less about the risk, or less about like the speed and the performance, and more about just everything's here. You have to like have all of your separate error handling, and you have no guarantees about it's going to be anywhere.
Yeah.
And less for that, and more of you'll have no guarantees that stuff you don't want isn't in there, which feels important for the interview stats if we are trying to be good about only having specific stuff that we want in there.
Yeah. As a limit of interview stats, I guess, if we're using that existing anything that people could use in different ways than it was expected. So
I wonder if it makes sense to do the opposite, but that's not going to fix everything now. But like going forward, and we'd still have to like support all this backend stuff. I don't really know if we want it to be useful at all. But it's one of those like, oh, going forward, maybe we should have just had we're only looking at the stats of this particular key, or this particular tag or whatever.
tag it with the key.
Yes,
stats.
like, yeah, instead of at the interview stats level, like, oh, we're filtering out this one particular key, it's like, oh, only look at this one particular key in interview stats. But that, like, we can't practically do that because we then lose all of the data that we've had so far. We'd still have to, like, oh, include, like, if we did a migration, it would be weird and risky. I don't know. There's just a lot of issues.
I'm not sure how many. So I'm thinking through the projects where I've used interview stats, and well, like I lost them twice for the GBLS server because of version issues with, I think it ended up ultimately being tied to the version of Docker and the version of Ubuntu, not matching what Docassemble was built on. So bugs there. And that was not the end of the world. So,
and I do remember you saying at one point that, like, it's less useful than just like it's still good. We can get more detailed information than you could for Google Analytics, but it's like less useful than just, or less reliable than just like the Google Analytics stuff, which is.
That's how I've been treating it. It's because of those two backup experiences that I had.
Okay, it's just the backup experience stuff.
Generally so. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think also, I mean, there's something to be said for like starting fresh. It's not tied to the server. It's stored in some third independent source. That's valuable.
Okay, I think whenever you had mentioned reliability there, I thought you were more mentioning like, oh, Docassemble doing weird double counting idempotency things, or Docassemble like just not reloading the page right and working sometimes. I was thinking more of like the server itself was just not reliable. But you're thinking more of it's like the data being on the server is just risky in general, which I agree with. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was just that I was thinking of. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be other things that are other risks, but what I was thinking of was specifically like, how much of a sysadmin do you want to be? How precious do you want your individual containers to be if you want to store statistics?
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So it's not a bad idea to add a key just for stats. To me, I think that's a low risk thing. The question is, like, what do we do with people who've upgraded interview stats but not assembly line?
Yeah, that's like.
We have to let people choose which key they want to look at. Maybe we could show the tags related to that interview. Say, which tag do you want to look at? Empty, stats, or metadata. For some reason, people want to use metadata.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I don't know. I still feel like I need a better mental model of what interview stats is trying to be good at and what it's trying to do, because I think my initial view of it, of like being a really good like pseudonymous way of looking at data, is not what it can actually do or will end up being. And if we gave people to do the tools of like looking at metadata and stuff, that's cool and maybe useful, but it's definitely not the opposite thing of what we wanted to do, of like making it easy to look at all of these bits of information from the interview, but not easy to like, oh, see, all of these people have used your stuff. Like,
yeah, I'd say like the main thing that I have used it for is to be able to say, here's where people are using it in the state. So the zip code report is helpful.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that is actually actionable, I think. And then the rest are analytics, and you're like, okay, now I see what people are doing and what they're not doing. Now I have to decide how I'm going to act with that information. There's more steps. You could track drop off. You could track. Well, I think in terms of like the up to code interview that raised this issue, we're tracking like which conditions people check. So you can see, oh, here are the most common kinds of housing problems people have in Massachusetts. That's interesting data to put in a report to a grantor.
Yeah.
Or to like raise publicity about your tool. But I mean, out of 150 possibility, it's like maybe that will be surprising results. Maybe it won't be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll just say, I think
you answer your question about what it's for.
A little bit. It's useful, but yeah.
Raw interview counts, I guess, is good too.
Less. I think I'm thinking
Trends.
less of like specific things we could do with it, because it's one of those like it has like, I don't know, it has a lot of potential and could do a lot of different things, and more of like what is our goal with using it, sort of thing, is what I think I get lost on a lot whenever I come back and look at it. Or like what as a tool, what are we trying to help it make it useful for?
Yeah,
I think
I guess-
this is getting really, I guess it's the point of the deep dive, but the way is to do deep dive, but at the risk of going too deep, I do think that we can filter out metadata key for now. I think that's a good change to do now. I don't know how useful it would be to, or I think it might be useful to also do the assembly line and the like interview stats updates to eventually switch, but that's a big migration step, and I don't know like how to best handle that or how long to let it go for, all of those things. So I'll just say I'm okay with adding the filter, the metadata filter right now.
What is tags?
Okay, let's tags, yeah.
It's just a text field. Okay, is it meant to be structured, or is it just a plural word? So I'm just checking.
I was looking for.
Oh, it's called key.
Yeah, that's the confusing part. It's in the
It's
Python
meant to be
API.
one word. Okay.
It is, okay, cool.
And it, for some reason, internally it's called tags. Tags the value of the key you pass to storage your purpose, not to be confused with the column. Okay, so I'm just going to say it's not equal to. I could add a quick default parameter here too. Try and think, what do we want it to be? Exclude or include? Exclude one key.
Exclude as a parameter doesn't seem super useful to me.
Right.
And including seems like just looking at one key at a time does seem like it would be useful, but it's just
But the default would be right now would be no key.
Yes, yeah.
So maybe not that useful for now. Okay, so what is user-defined tags meant to be? That was one I did not understand when I was looking at this code.
That would be data, I guess. Or no, that wouldn't be data, that is tags. I think I just called it user-defined tags instead of tags.
Okay, there's not really tags at all. So the key, there's usually going to be nothing.
Yeah, that was probably, I was in combination confused with what DocAssemble was trying to do and tried to give it a better name than just tags. And so I was like making it clear these are user tags, like these are tags that the authors or developers are adding and not something that DocAssemble is using internally.
So it was just renamed that particular.
Yeah. If it's definitely a thing we could change back since it's just local to all of this interview stat stuff. It's not, it shouldn't be saved anywhere else. It might not even be used anywhere else. It is not, it's only used in that one place, so. Call it whatever we want,
Oh, user defined tags isn't referenced anywhere else.
not that I could see.
Hmm. Okay.
I like probably took it out because I was just trying to get everything into a record, or get everything like, so I could use it and then never ended up using it, so.
Should we just rename it to key?
I don't think he is super useful as a name.
It's
rather
not.
Tags. I'd rather keep it tags to match
Okay.
the JSON, but it's up to you. Yeah, I
The
don't know if it
advantage
makes more
there
sense.
is it would match the store variable snapshot syntax. But it is described there that they're different. Doesn't explain why, but it's described. I guess key would be confusing because it's the session ID for some reason.
Yeah, I think that's the confusing part, is it was probably at one point key was just the Python parameter. And I guess it would have had to be the Python parameter, and he changed the JSON or the Postgres tables later and didn't want to change the method. It's what I whatever you think is. Honestly, you're probably going to be reading and using this code more than I am, and also I was the one who wrote it, so I think whatever you think is more understandable when going back and looking at it. I think the comment helps for sure, but whatever you want to change it to.
Yeah, let's go with tags because you're right, confusing, but it's tags is at least consistent with something that doesn't mean two different things.
Yeah.
It only has one meaning of all the options. All right, this does mean that maybe I can close this other pull request actually, now that I'm looking at it, because the real issue is duplicates. It doesn't matter if any of them have auto title, it would only be the metadata one.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, okay. I am glad that we like looked into this more, because I was like, something else is off, and I don't think just not showing one title is really the actual fix. And so I think this is as good as we'll get for the actual fix.
Oh, not meant to be in this. Let's test it. Something about a permissions thing. Okay. Sure, that actually runs. I'll open an issue to consider adding a new key.
I think it's a good step.
I guess it actually goes in the Weaver, now that I think about it. Maybe we should have our own wrapper function here, though.
I don't know. At one point, I think at one point Lily added a wrapper function in interview stats. Maybe she added some stuff to interview stats, and I don't remember exactly all what it was. I know she added some wrapper, but it was probably a different wrapper. I don't know. All that to say, I don't think that
You can't really do it in assembly line, though, huh? Has to be done interview by interview.
I think it makes more sense to do an interview by interview because it would be wrapping over just the key that we add, and I don't think that's a thing that we would change too much once we add. Um,
Yeah. The thing is, sometimes you want to have the different stages of the interview. Because you can, that's one thing you do with store variable snapshot. You can call it
Mhm.
final, etc.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So if we're reusing that for something unexpected, I'm actually not sure we want to do that. I'm not sure if that's a necessary feature or not. So when I do it in here, we revisit this multiple times, but it gets written to the same key each time.
Yeah, that was how
So-
I'd seen us do it in other interviews. Of it's always written to the same key, but we do like we'll add extra variables to be like got to middle, got to end, or whatever.
Which I think, yeah, that's what these choices are, like reach document choice screen.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
it in its own column. Page download screen. So maybe we could safely add a new key. I'm just trying to think that through. That's how Jonathan describes it, but it doesn't necessarily mean how, I don't know that anyone else is using it besides us. So
Yeah.
maybe we could safely use it that the tag is specific. Okay, we'll just make it as a potential issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Not 100% need to do, but yeah, I think if we wanted to do the actual thing that like interview stats was kind of meant to be of me like really strongly anonymous or strongly pseudo anonymous, then it would just need to be a completely different implementation and API and stuff. So
I think it would probably work for us just to make a new table, but the challenge is maintaining that new table. Like, I don't know. I don't want to have to mess with Alembic, but maybe we need to. I don't know. You can do it with when a package module file runs, it'll run the Alembic stuff if you want it to add new tables and stuff.
mhm.
But that works pretty well within SQL object, which I am now very convinced I never want to use on any other projects. To
Yes,
start, it's just so, yeah, not my
Okay.
favorite.
I'm with you there.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna add Maybe too much information, but there it is. And now I just want to make sure it runs, basically. Not sure how best to test which columns have metadata in them, but. Yeah, that interview stats, that hadn't really been touched very much since you first joined Suffolk. It was the first thing you worked on. And I'm not sure, but we definitely added the use of metadata well after that. It's probably like a year later.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that definitely all makes sense and is valid, but I don't know how much more like effort to put into the interview stat stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like used to just add like pretty general questions. So the data reporting stuff is potentially like another place for us to, but I don't think anyone's using it.
How was the I wasn't the data reporting stuff was
I just don't know.
I was less familiar about because that was the stuff that I think Lily added.
What should I check here?
Um,
All right, I ran that one a couple times. Maybe that'll work.
Yeah.
Okay, it works.
probably defaulting to is it defaulting to zip stuff? Is this the zip interview? I don't remember exactly what I called that one.
This is just called, this is the main front page one. So no, it's not that. Let's try running this.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I think it's a not equals thing. I think we have to have we count for it being null most of the time. Not equal doesn't work for when there's null values, I think. Yeah. Plenty of rows there, but sorry, what were you
I
gonna
was
say?
going to say the Stack Overflow version is distinct from is apparently the null safe version of not equal, and I think
Okay.
it looks like it's a Postgres specific thing probably, but
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
or the kind.
That looks good, right? Let me just try with the real file name here, maybe. That actually has some entries. I feel like maybe I should figure out how to use ORMs better, but I definitely don't like SQL objects implementation of it.
No, I'm with you there. I don't like ORMs. And I feel like the few times that I've come across people talking about them, they're like, maybe sometimes for performance reasons, I think mostly it's been for performance reasons, but they're like, yeah, just don't use ORMs. It's better to just know the SQL you're writing and get the stuff you want. But yeah,
Well, like the few times I want to use it, it's to like store a database of information. Right. So then it's not really well suited to that task. So maybe there's a different abstraction that is helpful for tables of data in the database that get updated once, because SQL objects all it has this weird stuff around persisting your changes from screen to screen.
yeah,
And you can easily inadvertently change records. Well, not, I mean, you're using the wrong tool for the job, but I had to work that through in a recent project. It's like, and then like it has this hinky syntax. It's like, none of this has helped me. So far, it's just gotten in my way.
yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's nice to use the SQL injection stuff. That's mostly what's helpful.
Yeah, it's really just a nice injection library.
Parameterizing your queries. Assuming it's kind of slow because it's okay. And then the total session stuff, right? Like we got to filter that too, probably.
Yeah,
Those are separate queries, I guess.
they are, yeah, overall stats right above.
Ah, okay. Well, this is your answer here. We're already filtering against metadata for
Already
overall
did.
stats. So that was just error leakage there.
My mind blown that I already wrote something like that.
It might
I
have
don't
been
think
something I put in.
I think it was, yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I remember that.
Hard to read the queries when they're all on one line like that.
Yeah, there's over above. Wait,
What's that?
I keep going back and forth. Okay, you're adding it now. Sorry.
I don't know what your preferences are as far as capitalization, but
I don't really mind. Yeah.
SQL queries.
Yeah, it works.
This is the same, I guess. Okay. All right, you don't have to watch me fix the capitalization and stuff, but I think I will do that just so these are all consistent when I
Not a bad idea.
merge this change. I won't make them all longer. No, that's been short enough. I'll just push it. Sure. Have a typo there. Okay. All right. That's good. I'm glad we went through that. Figure out the better fix. I'll open up a new pull request with that once I confirm everything fixed. Anything else?
For me, really.
And Michelle had a question about Playwright and Cypress. Only thing I would say, like, that's not on call now is like, I'm worried about refactors for refactor's sake, but maybe it's just adding something.
I'm curious to see what she was going to add. The best thing I had seen was that Playwright might have like Safari support. And that's the only thing I think I had seen. One of those may have had Safari support where it's like, and so it's like, it's good that we could catch some browser issues maybe. But yeah, I'm curious to see what else she might think about it because I'm skeptical that like trying to catch browser support in all of the like individual automation tests, it's not the right level. I don't like most people are not going to be making browser incompatible changes from Docassemble stuff. So
That
yeah,
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm curious to know if there might be some other things I'd never heard of Cypress before, so that might be completely different and do a whole lot of different. She was talking about like the data export and stuff, so I'm curious to see what she has thoughts on there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll let her bring it up next week. This
Cool.
all seems to be working. So yeah, I'll open up that pull request momentarily. All right. See you in real life soon.